topic of extrajudicial killing. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
we can still go back to Colonel Grijaldo later if you wish.
Mr. Chair, may tanong po ako no, kay Dr. Raquel Fortun related po doon sa mga several drug-related and activist-related AJK. So, Mr. Chair, Dr. Raquel Fortun, have you conducted autopsies to several drug-related and activist-related?
Drug-related, war on drugs?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I had the
Tsaka-
opportunity to actually perform autopsies on around 20 cases.
Drug-related?
Drug-related, and then...
Activist-related?
Activist-related, yes, several.
Okay. What is the standard or regular procedure to be followed in conducting an autopsy?
In an ideal situation, it is defined which deaths have to undergo what we call a forensic autopsy. And definitely in the cases we're talking about, they're violent deaths. They have to be investigated. And that means the body at the scene, as it is discovered, has to be also preserved in terms of physical evidence. At the scene, where the body is located, how it is positioned, so much detail has to be noted. And then the body has to be carefully removed from the scene for a more detailed examination. And this is where the autopsy comes in. And when we do an autopsy, a forensic one, there is a very detailed external examination. There's a lot of documentation. We expect our findings to be questioned. There must be no issue regarding who is this person, so we address identity. Also, cause and manner of death, but this is better assessed when we next do internal examination. It really depends on the case. If you have a shooting victim, I would typically ask for x-rays, if only to make sure that there are bullets there or not.
Okay.
So it depends on the case.
So pag sinabi po nating forensic autopsy, no, very detailed autopsy, tama po ba?
Yes, ma'am.
In terms of manner of death and cause of death, etc.
The word forensic there means you have legal questions to address.
Okay.
And typically, you have to answer that there's no question, this is the person you are, the person is properly identified.
Okay.
What killed him, how did he die?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Fortun. So did you conduct an autopsy on Ana Maris Chay Evangelista and her husband, and also her husband Ariel Evangelista and Manny Asuncion? Nag-autopsy po ba kayo?
Yes, ma'am. I did.
So these are victims of activist-related AJK known as Bloody Sunday Massacre. So for the records, what are your findings po dito sa mga autopsy nitong mag-asawa at saka kay Manny Asuncion?
Well, for the record, these individuals were part of what was called in media as the Bloody Sunday, because on this particular day there were 9 individuals killed, and I was able to actually examine all 9.
Mm-hmm.
They were brought to me in the UP College of Medicine morgue, and just to summarize, the cases were examined from March 9 to March 13.
Ito lang po, Dr. Fortun, sa mag-asawang Evangelista po, tsaka kay Manny Asuncion. Ano po yung findings ninyo?
I have already released the report, and if the committee or the Quadcom is interested or does not have a copy yet, I can provide. Because the details are here, I will have to like for instance, starting with Ana Marie Evangelista, in the autopsy report I issued, she sustained several gunshot wounds to the trunk, particularly in the chest area, 2, 1 in the abdomen, and there were internal injuries. This is the most severe. She also sustained through and through or perforating gunshot wounds of the upper extremity in the right hand. and the left forearm. And also, she had what I call projectile injuries or small fragments. Foreign bodies entered the lower extremities as well and some other parts of the body. Now, this is best correlated with the scene. What are these fragments? Are they from concrete, bullets? I wouldn't know because I had no access to scene findings, just the body.
So dun po ba sa autopsy, Dr. Fortune, nakikita natin yung, siyempre alam natin, yung mga sinasabi niyo po na mga details, like for example, kay Cha at saka kay do sa asawa niya po ay gunshot wounds. Ito, di ba? Mga gunshot wounds po yung mga nakita natin. So na-determine dyan kung ano yung trajectory noong baril na or yung bala na tumama doon sa isang body. So malalaman natin kung malapit binaril or malayong binaril, tama po ba?
When we say trajectory, this is the direction of the bullet as it entered the body.
Apo.
And this is actually descriptive.
Okay.
You're referring to a body standing upright, facing forward, palms forward. So it does not actually tell you how the individual was shot. Just by looking at the body, you have to address everything, like the scene findings, bullets, casings, blood spatter, totality of evidence. When you're asking about how far or how near the shot was fired, this is what we refer to as the muzzle to skin distance. And this is best assessed by looking at the entrance wound, because sometimes there are marks there, like smudging or soot, stippling, and so on. But again, in these cases, I had a lot of limitations. Like for instance, they were all embalmed. And the embalmer would introduce changes, like the injuries, like the entrance wound would be sutured. And that would damage the features there. Another limitation is, these cases, I did not have access to all their clothes. Clothing should be part of the autopsy. And only some of them had their clothes on them. I think the spouses, Evangelista, Ana, and Mr. Evangelista had their clothes, but the others I did not. So what I'm saying is you have to make use of a lot of information. But if the bodies are not properly documented, preserved, and so on, that poses a lot of limitations.
Okay, yung so ano po yung pinaka findings niyo po doon sa mag-asawa? So yung pagbaril po ay too close, yung pagbaril doon sa nakandak ninyong autopsy?
Again, the details would be in the actual autopsy reports, but I don't think in any of the cases I was able to commit to range of fire or how far or how near the shots
Okay.
were fired at them. The most I could say were how many shots were fired, where, what parts of the body were injured, what could have been fatal.
So you have that in your report? Nandiyan po yung sa report ninyo?
Yes, ma'am. The details
So,
are in the reports.
Mr. Chair, may we ask Dr. Fortu to submit the autopsy report po? Can you submit?
Yes, ma'am, I can. I have PDF copies with me, electronic files, but if you want the actual signed copies, they're in my office.
Based po doon sa trajectory or yung direction, sabi niyo po nung bullet, sa dami po ba ng mga wounds, masasabi ba natin na intentional yung pagbaril o hindi?
Actually, all of the individuals I examined, all 9 of them, sustained multiple gunshot wounds, particularly in the chest, in the trunk.
O intentional yung pagpatay?
If you would consider the multiplicity, the number of shots, then that implies intent.
Okay.
And then I also identified injuries in the upper extremities, which in forensic pathology we would call defense type injuries, because that means the individual instinctively tried to defend
cover
himself or herself.
Okay. Pag intentional po yung pagbaril, pagpatay, so that means ito po ba ay to the head, to the heart, or some part po ng body.
I understand in my summary all the 9 individuals sustained gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen, the trunk, where
So,
internal organ are.
Okay. Sa autopsy po ng PNP no, sa mag-asawang Evangelista, nakasaad po yung cause of death. So yung cause of death po, sabing ganon, ay, and I quote, gunshot wounds to the body. At walang nakasaad ng paano siya pinatay or manner of death. So tama po ba ito or sufficient na ito na explanation sa pagkamatay ng mag-asawa?
In the death certificates issued by the medical legal officer in Batangas, the statement is general. Like for instance, for Ariel Evangelista, it's perforating the heart and lungs, gunshot wounds to the body, firearm discharge. Actually, the statement is wrong. But anyway, this implies that he was shot in the body, which injured the heart and lungs. And, you know, if you do an autopsy, you can better explain what injuries were sustained. Like, same case, Mr. Evangelista, in my findings, he sustained, it confirms, yes, that he was shot in the heart, but also the aorta, the lungs, the diaphragm, the liver, there were massive hemorrhages. And I identified also the fractures. I was able to recover the bullet in the chest. As for manner, in the Philippines, this is often blank in the death certificate because we do not have a proper death investigation system. Doctors would not commit, even the police, as to manner, even if the individual was really shot. In our classification, we would call this homicide, and there is no commitment on the word homicide, even on the death certificate.
So, ang ibig po sabihin nito ay parang insufficient yung ginawang pag-iimbestiga in terms of, dun siyempre para kung nag-iimbestiga tayo na may namatay, so aalamin natin yung manner of death at saka yung cause of death. So, ang ginagawa lang usually ng mga pulis ay simple lang na sabihin na namatay sa gunshot wounds. So, ganun lang. Tapos manner of death, is it homicide, murder, or suicide, whatever. Yun, so yun lang po yung... So, paano natin po ma-determine kung talagang intentional yung pagpatay or hindi?
Generally speaking, I have been in the practice of forensic pathology for 30 years. And my observation is, that's it. We do not have a proper death investigation system. Killings are not properly and adequately and scientifically investigated. If there is some attempt to investigate, it's very, very superficial. Autopsies are not detailed. There is no correlation among the findings, like you do not put together findings on the body, the scene, the statements, physical evidence, and so on. So this is very, very much lacking in the Philippines. Even the death certificate is very deficient.
Okay. So, makikita natin dito, Mr. Chair, no, yung kung paano nag-iimbestiga, no? Kung paano nag-iimbestiga ang authority natin pagdating sa mga patayan. Parang hindi mo talaga makikita doon ano kung paano, no, kung intentional or whatever. Like for example po, Mr. Chair, yung kay Ariel and Chai, sinasabi lang doon na mode of death ay ano lang ano, yung homicide. Okay. So ang findings niyo na ito, sumusunod sa findings niyo Dr. Fortune, sumusunod ba sa regular or standard procedure para sa autopsy? So definitely ang sagot niyo ay hindi, no, dun sa ginawa ng PNP. Tingin niyo po ba yung kinandak na mga autopsy dito sa tinutukoy natin ng mga individuals ay sumunod po ito doon sa standard procedure ng autopsy?
Again, generally speaking, investigations in the Philippines, including autopsies, are not up to par with international standards. The cases I get, I try to come up with more or less, the procedure similar to what should be expected. But as I said, I have a lot of limitations. I have no access to the body at the scene. By the time the body comes to me, it's already embalmed. Many times, it's already previously quote-unquote autopsied or examined. And I have very limited information regarding the scene and other findings. So it's very difficult here in the Philippines.
So, doon po ba sa kinokonduct na autopsy, no? Ang ninyo, makikita po ba dito yung based po sa autopsy, consistent ba yung woods sa narrative na nanlaban? Kasi lagi na lang, kahit na po sa drug-related or activist-related, lagi na lang sinasabing nanlaban. So, ang laging depensa po ng pulis ay nanlaban. Nakikita po ba ito doon sa autopsy?
In the last hearing, that was asked of me several times, and I have tried to explain that just because someone fought back, this is not an excuse for the police to shoot them dead. And in some cases, I cited that there were marks of restraint, like they were handcuffed. So how could they have fired back or fought back? I have previously pointed out that these individuals were shot in the head, in the chest, in the abdomen where vital organs are, and they were shot multiple times. So this is not really an attempt to merely disable them or make them as a defense mechanism of the police. They were meant to kill. And also I have encountered several cases of, as I mentioned earlier, defense-type injuries, which are classically in the arms.
Okay, nakakita na po ba kayo ng PNP autopsy report?
Mr. Chair,
Para sa isang.
with the
Para sa-
indulgence of Congresswoman Franz,
Okay.
being the
Yes,
chairman of the
Congresswoman.
Committee on Human Rights, I really would like to be a part of the questioning on the HE case. So if you could be able to finish the questioning of Colonel Grijaldo, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, with the indulgence of Congresswoman Castro, the information being shared to the committee by Dr. Fortun is very important and vital. However, if we can limit, because these are details already of the autopsy, and based on the initial findings of Dr. Fortun, she already made a statement that this was a summary execution, if I'm not mistaken. Did you say that this was a how do you term that? Is this a summary execution of all the victims?
We actually do not come up with such a statement. The most that we can come up with is, that's it, the classification of manner is homicide.
And what is the classification for in these cases that you have studied? What could be the classification, the appropriate term for the kind of crime that happened?
Well, in forensic work, particularly forensic pathology, the most that we can come up with is to classify it as a homicide, which means that he was killed by the action or actions of another individual or other persons. We do not use the word murder because it's a legal term.
Okay.
Now, whether they were what you call summarily executed, this would require, actually the best is you reconstruct the shooting. How were they shot? But as I kept pointing out, I've had a lot of limitations. The most that I was able to do was to examine the remains.
Okay.
And your findings are best correlated with other findings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information. So, Congresswoman Castro,
Mr. Chair, parang sinasabi po kaya ni Chairman Abante, parang gusto mo nang matapos yung kay Colonel Grijaldo kasi gusto niya ring mag-participate dito sa...
So I could join.
Yes, opo. So last na lang, Mr. Chair.
Sige.
Parang ganun po kasi gusto niyang mangyari.
if I may
So-
suggest that questions that remember, let's not get out of the objective of this committee hearing, which is in aid of legislation, because we cannot go deeper into details of how or medical findings on some of the victims. We have already initially established that there were several extrajudicial killings committed
Yes.
or that happened. So baka ma-delay lang tayo doon, baka ma-lihis lang tayo doon sa issue ng how, why, and what
Yes,
legislations we can produce out of this investigation.
Natatanong natin to Mr. Chair dahil alam natin doon sa mga several mga thousands na namatay ay hindi po lahat na imbestigahan. O wala pa. I mean, few lang yung mga naimbestigahan.
Yes.
At gusto natin magkaroon po talaga ng standard procedure kung paano nag-iimbestiga ang pulis. Kasi kung ganito lang kasimple or hindi masyadong maayos yung manner ng pag-iimbestiga. So may kailangan tayong baguhin doon sa kanilang guidelines on how to investigate. Remember, Mr. Chair, di ba sabi natin, mahalaga yung buhay. Kaya bawat isa yan na namatay, kailangan alam natin kung paano, matiyak natin para mapanagot natin kung sino man yun. So
That
gusto
is correct.
nating mabago.
I absolutely agree with Congresswoman Castro in that statement. But perhaps it would be, shall we say, let's be more focused on the objective of the committee. I'm not saying we're not, you're not correct. No, I'm not saying that, Congresswoman Castro. What I'm saying is that yes, we can get into the details of the findings of Dr. Fortun because this is helpful. However, baka hindi na natin sakop yung isyung yun eh. That's why, yes, summary execution maybe because the bullet wounds were scientifically studied by Dr. Fortun, and it seems that there were no, how do you say that? Wala namang engkwentrong nangyari or something because they were apparently shot at close range and at a very fatal area of the victim's body. No? Baka, kasi parang heart yung tama at saka ulo eh. So,
Yes. Yes, so,
we don't want to get into
yes, hindi po tayo
details.
nag-example lang po ako. Pero syempre, ang gusto rin po natin generally ay malaman yung magiging procedure ng pag-iimbestiga ng otoridad.
Or maybe,
doon sa...
yes, or
doon
maybe
sa-
we can ask Dr. Fortun kung meron siyang suggestion as to how to, maybe in terms of legislation, baka meron din siyang maitulong sa atin.
Yes, sige. Sige, before that, Mr. Chair, yung po bang mga bullets na na-recover, saan po siya na-turn over? Sa pag-autopsy niyo, for example?
In this case, I recall that I was asked to turn over the bullets to the National Bureau of Investigation. And only for the Evangelista, if I remember correctly, I have that documented, only for the Evangelista spouses. So, they were turned over to NBI. I do not know if they were matched with or referenced to certain guns. My job is, my part of the work is to recover them
Okay.
and properly turn them over, describe them. They are part of the autopsy report. So I have no idea what happened.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, yung question po, no, meron po ba kayong suggestion na legislation, measures on, siyempre yung sinasabi nyo parang mali yung mga pamamaraan o may kulang doon sa pamamaraan ng, para malaman talaga natin yung cause of death, manner of death, kung paano sa napatay, etc. So, do you have a suggested legislative measure?
After coming from training 30 years ago, it was in a medical examiner's office. And that's what I learned. The realization that the Philippines does not have a death investigation system. And so I tried to push for two key pieces of legislation. One, a mandatory autopsy bill, which would define which deaths have to be investigated. It's still alive. It keeps being refiled in the two houses, Senate and the lower house. I don't know what has happened, but it's still alive. And the next question is, who would do it? So standards and how. And the Philippines at present does not have that fixed. Like for instance, everybody depends on funeral parlors. And funeral parlors are meant to embalm, to chemically preserve, not to examine bodies or preserve them as evidence, because bodies are physical evidence. Another key piece of legislation I tried to work on with UP was University of the Philippines Forensic Science Institute. Again, this was decades ago. It never took off. However, there are initiatives in UP supported by the National Administration. Executive Secretary Bersamin is very much in on
Okay.
this. We're trying to push for a forensic medicine training course in the University of the Philippines. And maybe at some point it will evolve into a Forensic Science Institute. I think that's the dream, a National Forensic Science Institute for the Philippines, but we are a long way off.
Yes, this representation filed a bill on mandatory autopsy on all deaths, which I sponsored since the last Congress. I also filed a bill on the maintaining a database of all DNAs. It was a bill that was forwarded to me and asked me to sponsor such bill. Until now, we haven't really discussed the details of the proposed legislation. But we will certainly insist in writing our committee report for this Quad committee. We will include those proposed legislation.
So, I register for the second round po, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
okay. Thank you. Salamat po, Congresswoman Castro. The next to interpolate is Congressman Romy Acop. You are recognized.
Marami pong salamat, Mr. Chair. And before I proceed to the meat of my interpellation, there are certain things to be asked the NBI. We have asked the NBI before in our previous hearing to conduct the official investigation regarding the Wesley Barayuga case. May I know from the NBI what is the status of the investigation?
NBI, Director Lavin, do you want to answer? Please proceed po. Please proceed.
Yes, Your Honors, Mr. Chair. Thank you. For the NBI, we are already wrapping up, or we are concluding the investigations on the Barayuga murder. And in about 3 weeks' time, we shall be filing our cases against those involved. We are only awaiting the results of the forensic examination on the gadgets turned over by the wife of the victim, Attorney Barayuga, and which was turned over also by this was turned over to our agent in Iloilo, Attorney Arnold Diaz, and he applied for warrants to examine the contents of the gadgets. These gadgets were brought to our main office for the examination, and we should be ready with our reports in about 2-3 weeks' time, Your Honors, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. In 3 weeks' time, cases will be filed. Did I understand your answer correctly?
Yes, Your Honors, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Marami pong salamat. From the PNP, who would represent the PNP?
Anybody from the PNP? Most highest officer present today. Please proceed, Chairman Acop.
Please identify yourself and your position in the Philippine National Police.
Mr. Chair, Your Honors, I am Police Major General Nicolas Salvador, the Director for Operations, Your Honor.
Thank you. Naka-attend po ba kayo sa previous hearings ng Quadcom?
On the first leg only, Your Honor, but on the succeeding, hindi na, Your Honor.
In the hearings of the Quadcom, it was reported by the PNP that there were 6,000 plus cases na nanlaban yung mga victims. Would that be correct? Would you agree with that?
Your Honor, may I be allowed to confirm this with the Directorate for Investigation?
Yes. Kasi galing naman sa kanila yung data na yun eh.
Yes, Your Honor. Dito ka na lang. Yes, Your Honor, based on the record given by the DIDM, it is indeed more than 6,000 cases.
Yes. Nanlaban po yan. Open and close quotation.
These are died in police operations, as indicated on the report, Your Honor.
Yes. Nanlaban yan kaya napatay sila eh, di ba?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, kung nanlaban, ano po yung armas na ginamit po nila?
We do not have a record here, Your Honor, but it is within the forensic group, Your Honor.
Mostly firearms.
Mostly firearms, of course, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, in the previous hearing, the PNP was asked to submit a disposition of these firearms as pieces of evidence. Saan po sila nakalagak?
It is within the forensic unit, Your Honor.
Could you please comply to the directive of this committee to submit to this committee? Nirequire na namin ito eh. Wala pa akong nababasa na report kung ano ang disposition ninyo doon sa firearms allegedly used doon sa 6,000 plus cases.
Your Honor, probably we can request for the Secretariat because I was told that it has already been submitted to the committee
COMSEC,
as to the disposition of these firearms, Your Honor.
kindly confirm whether they have complied with this directive of the committee. El Salvador, meron talaga. Meron kayo received copy by the COMSEC?
We are asking right now, sir, the DIDM. We will check if it's indeed there is a received copy.
But anyway, since time is of the essence, kindly submit the disposition of the alleged firearms used in the as questionable operations.
Yes, we will, Your Honor. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, may I know from Attorney Conti? Practicing lawyer po kayo, ano po ba?
Yes, Your Honor.
If I remember it right, lawyers are supposed to be officers of the court.
Yes, Your Honor.
And they are governed by canons of legal ethics.
Yes, Your Honor. The
Iba na yata ang pangalan ngayon.
Code of Professional Responsibility
Yes.
and Accountability.
And under propriety, a lawyer shall at all times act with propriety and maintain the appearance of propriety in personal and professional dealings, observe honesty, respect, and courtesy, and uphold the dignity of the legal profession consistent with the highest standards of ethical behavior.
I believe that would be
Yes, sir.
substantially correct, Your
Yes,
Honor.
ma'am. Section 5 under Canon of Legal Ethics 2, observance of fairness and obedience. A lawyer shall, in every personal and professional engagement, insist on the observance of the principles of fairness and obedience to the law.
Yes, Your Honor.
Kindly remember that, Colonel Grijaldo. Hindi. Kaya nga, kaya ko pinatatandaan sa kanya dahil may mga katanungan ako doon eh. Anyway, may I ask the page, Comsec, or could you please show this to Colonel Grijaldo, if this is his affidavit submitted to the Senate? Was this the, or is this the affidavit that you submitted to the Senate, Colonel Grijaldo?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. And in your answer to the Honorable D.S. Suarez a while ago, you stated under oath that you stand by the truthfulness of your statements here in this affidavit. Tama po?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. And you have imputed certain inappropriate actions on our two colleagues, the Honorable Abante and the Honorable Fernandez. Tama po ba?
Your Honor, I will stand by my statement in the Senate under oath,
That is
and I
not
would
an
like to invoke my
appropriate-
right to self-incrimination, Your
That
Honor.
is not an appropriate answer to my question. Ang tinatanong ko po is, dito sa mga statements mo na ito, you have imputed inappropriate actions by the Honorable Abante and the Honorable Fernandez. Would that be correct? Yes or no?
Your Honor, I stand by my statement given at the Senate under oath, Your Honor, and I'll invoke my right for self-incrimination, Your Honor.
Okay. May I ask the Honorable Abante and the Honorable Fernandez? Ngayon ako makaganti, Mr. Chairman.
And if I may, let me remind the two congressmen that you are under oath.
In the statement or sworn statement of Colonel Grijaldo, it stated here, number 4, after I answered questions related to extrajudicial killings and the reward system, I was approached by a security personnel while I was seated as one of the witnesses during the hearing. The said person told me that I was being summoned by Congressman Dan Fernandez. The Honorable Fernandez, do you agree to this statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. When I entered the room, I saw the two lawyers of Police Colonel Garma standing inside the room. Two lawyers of Colonel Garma standing inside the room. one of the lawyers approached me, then asked me what we were going to talk about. I said that I do not know. May I ask the Honorable Abante and Fernandez if there were really the presence of the two lawyers of Colonel Garma were present?
Yes, Chairman Akop, yes.
The Honorable Abante, do you agree with Honorable Fernandez?
He's talking to somebody, Mr. Chairman. Maybe you can cite him in contempt.
Chairman Abante. Chairman Abante, you're being asked. Chairman Abante, you're being asked by Chairman Akop to confirm the statement.
Do you agree with the statement of Colonel Grijaldo that there were two lawyers of Attorney Garma present when you talked with Colonel Grijaldo in a room?
Yes, yes, Your Honor. There were two lawyers present.
Thank you, Your Honor. And according to the affidavit of Colonel Grijaldo, the Honorable Fernandez asked Colonel Grijaldo to sit beside him, and you entered the room and sat on the far end chair on the right. And one of the lawyers of Colonel Garma stood near the back of Colonel Grijaldo. Would that be correct?
Ako yung unang dumating, Mr. Chairman. If I remember it right, nung dumating po ako, nakaupo na po siya.
Okay. So, nakaupo na siya.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. The Honorable Abante?
Yes, it was a small room, no? Doon lang sa corner na yan. And so, malapit din kami sa isa. So, just near to each other. In fact, Mr. Chair, I'd like to say na when I talked to him before he came in the room was that because it was Colonel Garma that said that Colonel Grijaldo knows a lot. He knows a lot about this thing. So, sabi ko, sige, total, normal naman yung vetting na ginagawa natin, kinakausap natin. So, we talked to him and sinabi ko kay Colonel Garma, can he corroborate your statement? Ang sabi ni Colonel Garma, yes eh. So, kinausap namin.
Your Honors, pasensya na po kayo kasi hindi naman sumasagot kasi sa mga tanong ko sa si Colonel Grijaldo. Kaya kayo po ang tatanungin ko na muna.
Mr. Chair, if I be allowed.
The resource person is not allowed to ask questions.
No, I'm not asking questions, Mr. Chairman. I will be answering in relation to the answer of
So you
Congressman.
are replying to the question
Yes.
raised by
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Well, ang totoo po kasi noon, yung pong dalawang lawyer ni Colonel Garma, sila po talaga yung nag-approach sa amin. Ang sinabi po nung dalawang lawyer, if I remember it right, yung pangalan po nung lawyer si Attorney Victor, nakalimutan ko po yung ipilido.
Attorney Kilang and Attorney Kumigad.
Yes, opo. Ang sabi nila, kasi kung matatandaan niyo po, yung ating supplemental affidavit na ginawa po ni Colonel Garma was given to us on the day itself. And then, nung binabasa po natin, sabi natin, sino magko-corroborate nito? Sino magbe-betting ito? Lumapit po yung dalawang lawyer. At ang sabi, kung pwedeng kausapin si Colonel Grijaldo. Dahil si Colonel Garma ay very close daw kay Colonel Grijaldo. At siya makakapag-bet sa mga nakalagay doon sa supplemental affidavit. So, ang sabi ko naman kay Attorney Victor, tama-tama andyan si Grijaldo doon sa likod. Bakit hindi natin siya imbitahan doon sa room doon sa may kainan para nang sa ganon ay makausap natin kung patotohanan niya yung sinabi ni Colonel Garma na magkaibigan sila at ibebet niya yung mga nakasulat doon. So, basically, hindi naman po siya ganun kalaking issue. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chairman, hindi nga tayo ang nag-initiate eh. Sila pa yung nag-initiate sa atin na kausapin si Colonel Grijaldo, which I did together with, nagkataon po kami ni Chairman Abante during that time. Magkalapit kami doon. Sabi ko, pare, sumama ka na sa akin. Kaya sa sumunod. Kaya nagulat na lamang po kami that biglang nagkaroon po ng ganong istorya. But nevertheless, Mr. Chairman, yun po yung nangyari doon. At nung pumasok po ako sa loob, nauna po ako kay Chairman Abante ng konti lang. And then, sinabi ko sa kanya, Colonel Grijaldo, ito yung mga nakasulat dito sa affidavit. Sabi ko dito sa paragraph, hindi ko matandaan, 17 ata o something gano'n. Ito ba, mapapatutuhanan mo na sinabi ni Colonel Garma. Ang sabi niya, wala po akong alam dyan. Yung ibang ibang mga sinabi ni Colonel Garma. Kasi sabi niya, kaibigan kanya eh. So, basically, doon po umikot yung aming usapan. Siguro maabot po yun ng mga less than 10 or 15 minutes. And then, nung sinabi niya talaga wala siyang alam, edi lumabas na po kami. And the CCTV can prove na talagang hindi po kami nagtagal sa loob. At the same time po, pag tinignan niyo po yung kwarto dyan, kahit puntahan po natin lahat, napakaliit po ng kwarto. At sa labas po ng kwarto, marami pong mga tao nandun. So kung nagkaroon po ng coercion, nagkaroon po ng harassment, nagkaroon po ng forceful force galing po sa amin, I think malalaman po ng mga taong nandyan. And even the CCTV, nung lumabas po siya dyan sa ng pintuan niyan, makikita po natin na yung itsura niya, hindi naman po siya mukhang na-coerce. Mukhang masayang-masaya pa nga po siya. Kaya, I think, Mr. Chairman, yung pong accusation sa atin, na malayan yung ating pong committee and the two chairman, masyado pong unfair. But of course, binibigyan pa rin po natin siya ng pagkakataon na liwanagin po yung mga pangyayari. Kaya, andito po tayo at binibigyan po natin ng patas na pagdinig. Marami pong salamat sa pagkakataon.
Mr. Chair,